Good morning, friends. This morning, I'm going to show you proof in the law that this corrupt cop is not only ignorant of the law, but a complete embarrassment to the uniform, his department, and the profession in general. Okay, so we're in Texas, and I'm going to show you a document that I first got from the Republic of Texas years ago, somebody in the Republic of Texas, and I altered it a little bit, and we're going to go over the first three things today that an officer says to you when you get stopped. I'm going to leave this up on the screen so that you can screenshot it and save a copy of this. At the very top, I do give you the references of where I've gotten these, and I've talked before about going and looking up the statutes and looking at law.cornell.edu, which is an excellent resource. So we're going to look at traffic, and the first three things an officer says when he approaches your car is generally, I want your driver's license, your registration, and your proof of insurance. So we're going to go over these in the Texas Code and have a look-see. So number one is, are you required to have a driver's license when you travel on a public right-of-way? That's the first thing they always ask. And I should mention in this stop, he did write a ticket, although I didn't sign it, and he didn't take me to the magistrate because he told me he had to arrest me. And I wasn't down for being arrested. I was down for going to the magistrate, but I didn't want to be arrested, so he chose not to take me to the magistrate, which was my right to go and to ask. So I didn't sign a ticket, but he wrote one anyway. And one of the things he did write me for was expired driver's license. But let's look and see what the code says. Texas Transportation Code 521.001 definitions. In this chapter, driver's license means an authorization issued by the department for the operation of a motor vehicle. The term includes A, a temporary license or instruction permit, and B, an occupational license. What is an occupational license? Wouldn't that be the same thing as a CDL, a commercial driver's license? So they don't give us any definition for what occupational license means. But anyway, that's all you have is a temporary or instruction and an occupational. And then we have a little bonus for you here. It's Keith Brooks versus the state, which says, and that was the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And it says, an information charging the driving of a motor vehicle upon a public highway without a driver's license charges no offense, as there is no such license as a driver's license known to the law. So there's our Texas criminal courts stating that there is no such license as a driver's license known to the law. Then we have Frank Callis versus state. And in this one, it says the court has held there's no such license known to Texas law as a driver's license. So it looks like a terrible conflict here to me. You be the judge on that. Now let's move on to number 2. Are you required to register or accept a certificate of title for your private carriage or your consumer good? a vehicle is, or a carriage or a car or whatever you want to call it, is also named in the code as a consumer good. So if we look under Texas Transportation Code 501.004 under applicability, and this is applicability of the Certificate of Title Act. A says this chapter applies to motor vehicles owned by the state or a political subdivision of the state. This chapter does not apply to a motor vehicle while it is owned or operated by the United States. Texas Transportation Code 502.003, registration by political subdivision prohibited. A political subdivision of this state may not require an owner of a vehicle to, 1, register the vehicle. So, no political subdivision, which is going to be your county or any other branch of your state, your DPS, Department of Public Safety, your transportation board, whatever it is in your state. Now, these codes, you can look them up in your state and you're going to have something similar. But let's look at number 2. Number 2, they can't require you to pay a motor vehicle registration fee. Isn't that interesting? And number 3, they can't require you to pay an occupation tax or license fee in connection with a motor vehicle. B, this section does not affect the authority of a municipality to license and regulate the use of motor vehicles for compensation within the municipal limits. Okay, so if you're using your vehicle for compensation, in other words, for hire, then you would be operating, I suppose, under an occupational or CDL license, and of course, you would be subject to some regulations. So now let's look at number 3. Do I have to provide proof of insurance at a traffic stop? Well, that one's a maybe. It depends on whether you have an accident or not, because Texas Transportation Code 601.292 provides duty to provide evidence of financial responsibility to investigating officer. A person whom this subchapter applies shall provide evidence of financial responsibility to a law enforcement officer of this state or a political subdivision of this state who is conducting an investigation of the accident. So there had to be an accident, at which time you would need to provide financial proof of responsibility. Texas Transportation Code 601.293, failure to provide evidence of financial responsibility, magistrate's inquiry and order. A person to whom this subchapter applies who fails to provide evidence under section 601.292. Now that's the code we just read where you have to provide evidence after an accident. So a person who fails to provide that evidence under section 601.292 shall be taken before a magistrate as soon as practicable. B, the magistrate shall conduct an inquiry on the issues of negligence and liability for bodily injury, death, or property damage sustained in the accident. C, if the magistrate determines that there is a reasonable probability that a judgment will be rendered against the person for bodily injury, death, or property damage sustained in the accident, the magistrate shall order the person to provide 1, evidence of financial responsibility for the bodily injury, death, or property damage, or 2, evidence that the person is exempt from the requirement under 601.051. And D, a determination of negligence or liability under subsection C does not act as collateral estoppel on an issue in a criminal or civil adjudication arising from the accident. So, right there, right off the bat, 1, 2, 3, driver's license, registration, and insurance not required. Now, in our next video, we're going to get on to what he calls probable cause and what he calls a crime, and how he's ignorant on the law on those issues as well. So, in whatever state you're in, if you will just Google these terms under your Kentucky Transportation Code driver's license, and you can pull these up in your state and have a look and see what the law actually says, because we can clearly see here there is no such offense, there is no such thing as a driver's license known to Texas law. We can see that they can't require me to register a vehicle or pay a vehicle registration fee, and that I don't have to provide financial responsibility evidence until there's an investigation of an accident. So, this is a huge problem that we have officers on the street that don't even know the law they're enforcing. And it's a travesty that we have the American people that don't know the law either. So it's time we all get informed. That's it. That's all I have for today. And in the next one, we'll go over the other issues with this stop. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we hope that, of course, you'll like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.